Right, what up YouTube? Hope that you're doing all really well. I've got antennas sticking up now, have I? Never mind. Well, we'll leave them there. Better for reception. Zip, 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 zip. We'll come to that. Anywho, let's move on. Anywho, right. We're going to crack open a little bottle here. And this video is for Matt, Lee, Russ, Mike, and a girl over 20 years ago who called me insane. I think she has a point. Well, her name is VM, and she called me insane because, yeah, well, I'm going to bang on about these sodding implants again anyway, which I had done, by the way, 15 months ago. It's that thing that you can see there. Right, let's just quickly put that down and show you again what we mean. Right, okay, come on, focus. I have to turn the brightness down a bit then. So let's do that. There it is, and you'll see what it says. And no cheating. Right. Implant there, you can see it in the hand. Come on, pick it up. Come on. It's not going to do it now, is it? You get. There it is. So it does pick it up. Awesome. Okay, cool. Right. That works. And what about the other one? Let's clear that off. This video is going to age about as well as what I was told, isn't it? Okay, let's see if the other one picks it up. Probably not on this one, actually, because it's on a separate protocol. You might not read it. No, I don't think it does on this one. Anywho, that's not really the reason why you called. No, well, it works on that one. Come on. Pick it up. Oh, software updates. Of course. I got to update that, didn't I? Come on. Pick it up. Pick it up. Pick it up. Just got to find the right placement for it. Yeah. Oh, I feel that. Yuck. Come on. Find me. Oh, I couldn't read it. Try again. Oh, there we go. Anyhow, right, move on. Right, okay. That's the that whole thing done. So, VM, right, is a girl that called me nuts for saying this sort of stuff over 20 years ago. Now, I've not spoke to her in, well, many years, and I think she's sort of quite happily moved on with her life, and I hope she's doing all right. Right, now, bearing in mind, when somebody of a young age, like what I was, says the things that I did, I'm sure you would call that person nuts. And I'm sure half of you would even think I'm nuts now. But just because you think I'm mad doesn't necessarily mean to say I'm wrong either. Well, that's a hell of a claim to make, isn't it? Alright, that is a hell of a claim to make. So, well, yeah, about the title of the film then. The Fate of Humanity. And we have help from my dear friend here, Scully, as you can see, who has quite an implant of itself. We'll come back to Scully in a bit. Alright. Let's focus on something just for a minute, though. Alright. The fate of humans in general. And I'm not talking to you as a human. I'm talking to you as a hybrid. That's right. I'm certainly talking to you potentially as one. That stuff's getting done, by the way, at some point. Anywho, alright, the future of humans. Alright, assuming they don't take themselves out, which could be done through any number of reasons, such as geopolitics, mass migrations like we're seeing at the minute. I'm not going to go into that one. And scarcity and rarity of minerals and resources like what we're seeing, and overpopulation, coupled with what's going on with the environment. It's nothing short of a shit show. Alright, so humans largely listen to too much BS, spread too much rumours as well, and invest themselves into too much negativity, and never really seem to get much done while doing that. That, and as well, they seem to be addicted to these whole things that was spoken about before with talking stones. When we mean talking stones, we mean things like that. Well, not that, because that's just the screen. I like ice cream. Lick it. There. No, don't. Do you like ice cream? I mean ice cream. Funny. Alright. It was written about in many prophecies where humans will get obsessed with talking stones. Could that be because of what's known as talking crystals? Which, is it quartz? Yes, it would be. Because quartz clocks, quartz radios, and quartz was used in early electronics. Anywho, that's not the reason why you called. Call failed. Alright. So, humans largely got addicted to these things. Alright. Conspiracy theorists came along and said, oh, but microchips and all of that, and the government's going to do that. Well, why would they need to when you're already running around with these? Does that, though, having said that, mean the end of humanity? Probably not. But we'll come back to this in a bit. Geopolitics and nature could well do. Alright. In short, Mother Nature has this cynical way of dealing with, if you want for a better way of it, dealing with the trash. Alright. It's called biological obsolescence. And it's sort of, I do believe it's Darwinian. There's a history of it. It happened with the Neanderthals. They couldn't adapt, they couldn't change, they couldn't compete for resources, and boink, they were gotten rid of. You get it, it's happened throughout history. And it's essentially happening again. But again, this still isn't really the reason why you called. Because, as we said, it's the future. And the future planned, or maybe not planned, but the future obsolescence of humans, and something to do with the technological singularity. Alright. Which is where we'll start to pick this up in a minute. But if humans are going to go extinct for other reasons, then it's got to be natural. Well, we covered the whole global warming thing and the whole destruction of nature. In essence, we can't sustain, well, you can't sustain yourself, so you starve out and die. or you render the planet inhospitable through war or whatever else. Now, okay, you've also got things like asteroids and other sort of astronomical catastrophic events that we might not have any idea of what's around the corner in that regard. Now, granted, space is pretty big, but equally, stuff out there is just as big. So anything hurtling this way, you might not get any time to react to it. And even if you could, well, you're screwed. Basically put, if it knocks the atmosphere off the planet, you're done for. Right? And even if none of that happens, well, then unfortunately humans are essentially a shit design. They only live for, on average, about 7 decades, and in that time any manner of stuff can go wrong, which may or may not require medical attention, depending on it. And certain humans are just as equally good at removing themselves from the gene pool through stupid actions as they are removing others from it. So again, it's nature at work. But like we said, this isn't really the reason why you called. We're talking about obsolescence. Let's cover that. But at least now you get the whole general idea of where this thing is going. Humans are just too inconsistent and not good enough really in the longer term. Not really when it comes to evolution. Let's cover this in just a minute. Right. Here's a case in point. I like to think I'm pretty good at what I do. Pretty good. And I am going to be going back to university. So you might be wondering, well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, quite a lot. Since I've been doing in the area what I've been doing, I have made obsolete at least 2 businesses and 8 people. Because, like we said, they're too emotional and too inconsistent. They're too expensive and can't do the things that I do. Pretty much. Alright. When you have things like is riddled in my body, I can put that technology to good use. Or at least to better use. I do need to deal with this in a minute. But anyhow, let's pause this a sec. Hang on. Right. As we said, a couple of businesses and about 8 people that essentially can't do what I can do. Because I have the technology within me and I use it. And I don't identify as a human anyway. Well, largely because now I'm technically not. That's called a cyborg. This is where we pick this thing up. Alright, you remember when I said just a moment ago about evolution, about certain species going obsolete? Nature and the universe in general, doesn't kind of argue with that. It's about doing things in the most effective and simplest way possible. And the most effective. Mainly. This is why the Neanderthals went out, and this is why many other civilizations fell. They couldn't adapt and change. And this is where it brings us. Right? I don't feel much in the way of emotions on a day-to-day basis, other than happiness and the enjoyment of what I do. And I'm deeply passionate about that, as most people would know. And I get on with it. I just do what I have to do. Alright? I live for this stuff. I live for technology. Not when it does that. You kind of get the point. Right? And I have a sharper brain. I'm not saying I'm any fucking genius or anything, but I have a lot more going for me than what my competitors do. So, essentially, they couldn't compete. On a more commercial scale, you see this being played out. Look at what happens now in supermarkets. Take local Tesco's. Alright? Well, now you have a whole bank of self-serve terminals. Alright? Where you scan your own items. One of those. Essentially a machine. They replace people. I think you see where this is going. Those people now have to go somewhere else. Right? Well, vehicles now are largely becoming, self-drive. So you get self-driving cars. Fairly soon, that's going to put drivers out of a job then. So they're going to have to go somewhere. However, there are certain things that humans do better than machines at. Decision making, partly, where emotion is needed, sort of, or where there's fine dexterity, sort of. You might want to hold that thought, because the age of the cyborg is here. That's right. The age of the cyborg is here. I'll explain. Right. Humans are largely too emotional for the main part. Right? They wake up, they have bad days. To myself, sometimes I have those, but largely remain unaffected by it. Right? Machines don't have that problem. Right? Machines don't require nearly as much break time. Right? Humans, though, have fine motor skills, at least for now. Well, at least until machines do. Right? But there are a lot of things that humans are good for, but machines can sort of do. However, the cyborg meets both of these requisites in the middle. Now, I'm not saying that cyborgs expressly are going to do away with humans completely, because cyborgs themselves might become obsolete. That's because the human form is largely a bad design for reasons why we touched upon. The human form can only live for about 70 years. However, with medical advancement, with nanotechnology, we can extend life a lot further. Right? Well, we already have heart transplants, lung transplants, and we can deal with kidneys. Right? What we can't do is actually replicate yet completely the human liver. Right? That's one of a couple of organs, and of course the brain. However, there is a way around that. Take the brain, and you can alter that by essentially putting this stuff in it. we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to show you some other stuff. All right. And for those of you who doubt this can be done, I'm going to give you about 20 years of history cut down very quickly. Let's have a look. Okay, so what we have here is a hodgepodge of circuitry. This is pulled from various systems over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years or so. Let's have a little look and you'll see what's going on. Alright, and let's start with this guy. We're paying attention here and we're cherry picking it a little bit for a few reasons. Largely because this stuff is becoming obsolete. Well, USB ports largely are now anyway because we're on USB 3 and we don't tend to use VGA anymore, and yeah, you get the whole point. What is this, the SPDIF, it's the fibre, still is. It's still useful. We're on about this guy, right? Broadcom chip and the RAM modules. This was from about the year 2000. Right? About 2012, we see a big change. Better processors and the RAM modules have become smaller. 2010, they were like this. 2 years later, they come down to this. Right? Desktop memory looked like this. Right? And this is a gigabyte stick. I think that's a gig of desktop memory. Right? So that was sort of around that kind of age. Let's move it on a little bit. Right. 3 years later, we now have this. Look how much smaller that's become. And it's just as powerful and better. In fact, it's more powerful, smaller and better. Older, newer. Now? How about now? Now? How about now? That Broadcom chip here, let's get rid of that because we won't need it now, is only a fraction of the capability of what we have here. Fraction of it. And look at how simpler things have actually become. But yet, it's complex simplicity because it's all complicated in here. Right? This was sort of around 2013, 2014. Well, actually, the iPhone 5, I think this is the iPhone SE, or based upon the iPhone 5, does essentially most of that all on that one board. Right? Most of all this stuff is redundant because most people nowadays use wireless communications, so half of that isn't even necessarily needed nowadays. And by the way, the Xbox 360 also isn't needed because in this day and age you can do all your gaming on a smartphone with far better graphics than that. Far better. The Galaxy S9, I think this one is, was around 2017, 2018. This one has facial recognition on it and fingerprint. Only about 3 or 4 years after that. Your biometrics here on the old iPhone are touch. You do have that on the S9. It's smaller. The camera resolution's better as well. You see where this is going, don't you? Because I certainly do. Move it on a little bit. Alright. You have the Note 9. This one's flat. It's essentially just a bigger version of this, but with more technology in it. So you see where this is going. This isn't looking very good so far for humans, is it? If basically machines are adapting at this rate, and the human form has largely been unchanged. Now, bearing in mind, we're only having a quick little snapshot of the last only 20 years. I could make an even bigger example and say, well, if we look back to the 1800s and say, well, the Industrial Revolution. Right? So then we're talking about the days of the steam engine, the advent of the light bulb from Thomas Edison, John Logie Baird with the television, Alexandra Graham Bell. Alexandra Graham Bell was the first wrong numbered phone call. Alexandra Graham Bell was the one who invented the telephone. That's a joke, by the way. Then you had the Wright brothers back then with powered flight. Henry T. Ford, who rode out with the Ford car, I do believe, not the KA, but the Ford motor vehicle, so on and so forth. That's if we wanted to look back to the 1800s, which was only about 220 years ago, and computers weren't really a thing. Well, they weren't. Right. So, let's move things now to this day. This is where you are going to be blown away. That is what we have in the iPhone 5. Right? Well, the 5 SE, basically. It's in between the iPhone 5 and the iPhone 6. The components we have nowadays are this size. That's right. You need actually a microscope to see them properly. Now, whereas those are only resistors, the actual microchips themselves are not hugely bigger than that. And this is where we pick up good old-fashioned Scully here. You remember the film Terminator? Kiss, kiss. Yep. Well, that's a bit big, isn't it? We'll have that out. Too big, and this is got camera and a laser in it. Don't need it. That's obsolete. It's obsolete only in about 4 or 5 years or so, because we have, unbelievably, sit there, Scully, cameras that look like that. I don't know if you can see that properly. Look how tiny that is. That's my little finger, by the way. How shocking is that? With facial recognition on the lot. microphone on there, everything. So, zoom in. Well, we can get plenty more of that in you, can't we? Oh well, I think we could probably get another 10 or 15 of those in you, old Scully. And that's how you see, certainly, well, there's plenty of room in there, isn't there, really? Plenty of room. Even if we were going to use technology, let's say that was, I don't know, 10 years out of date. Let's have a look at this, shall we? Because this is incredible. Let's take our processor, which is, yeah, alright, about the size of a thumbnail then. Let's compare that. Tons of room in there. Loads of room. Right? Loads of room. And that skull is nowhere near as big as mine. Nowhere near. See? Loads of room. Loads of room to work with. Alright. Tons and tons and tons of room. So, as far as humans going extinct, don't know about that, but going obsolete, they already are. Let's move on to something else interesting then, shall we? Yeah, let's do that, because I have something else I want to show you. Let's touch upon hard drive storage. Let's do that, because this is a real eye-opener. 1 minute. Actually, just before we do, you'll remember a minute ago I was mentioning about that. Alright. Actually, I forgot to show you something. This was around, yeah, sort of in the last 10 years. Alright. The same thing was in the last 5. Should we have a look? I think we should. Let's bang that back cover off. We won't need that. Does all of the same stuff. Look how small that is. Look at that. See? Much better, isn't it? That's the way it's going, and these things now are becoming even more advanced. This is just a really bad example, but it's an example nonetheless. And the total cost of that one, this is how cheap it is, what do I do with the back of it, was about 10 quid for that. The same thing, essentially then, would have set you back about 30, 40 quid. You see where that's going. So as we move forward, the cost comes down because our ability to manufacture it gets better and easier. That's progression, I guess. I just thought I'd quickly wave that one in there. Now, I did promise you about drive storage. Well, I did, and I'm going to show you. Alright. Go back about, I don't know, 20 years ago. These things were all the rage. This one I think in here is, I can't remember if it's a 180 or a 250 gig. Right. But back then, that would have been the apex. It would have been basically the best on the market. About 20 years ago. I think it was 500 gig, something like that. No, it's less than 20 years ago. What am I on about? Or is it? No, because they're terabyte drives. Yeah, they were about, but they were hugely expensive. Look at the size of that. It's massive. Look at the size of that. Big difference. That's a bad comparison, actually. Hang on a minute. Now look at the size of it. That's only 8 gig, but that only requires about 2.5 volt. This requires over double that. How many of these could I get in that? More interestingly, let's bring back old Scully here. I think now there's plenty of room in there, isn't there? Loads of room. Don't forget, under the skull you have an area between the skull and the brain. Plenty of room for something like that. We just need to find a way of powering it without putting batteries there. Well, we do have a way potentially of that with calculators. You have these solar panels across the top, and I'll just quickly show you something with this. It's only a theory. As nanotechnology moves forward, it might become possible to actually do it. Well, solar panels, right, require light to work. Alright, try this. Good old biometrics, love it. Go away. Right, so essentially you need a light to make that solar cell work. Would it work under skin? Well, let's find out. Possibly, if we can get the frequency right. Because you can see a light through there, can't you? Right through that, in fact. Let's cover that completely. Yeah, almost completely. Shine straight through. Cover that completely. Shines through. So theoretically, if I was to find a way on how to make one of those photovoltaic cells implant under the skin, it might be possible to actually charge it up that way. I don't know if that actually shines through now, but it certainly does there, look. And you can even see a vein in my finger, look. See? How cool is that? Covering that completely, and you can even see through that. So, what I need to now do is cover that with a convincing facsimile of skin, something that would behave like a human skin. And the idea is then shine light through it and see if I can actually generate a voltage. If I can, then I don't need to implant batteries. What I then can do is implant that under the skin and use that to power our chips. No batteries needed. Alright. Similarly, with the cards here, they don't require a constant power source, and they will hold data for 10 years minimum. Right? So all you would do is then, using the same technology what we have here, you would implant this under with it, and you could either have a charging coil there or have one of these light sources and essentially IR beam it. How cool is that? Permanent storage. The guts of a calculator, that's interesting. Mathematical calculations, possibly. Who knows? That's something for the future. That is something for the future on that one. Definitely. This has got me thinking, and I might be going back to university then, because I might want to study further on that. I propose a toast. In fact, now I propose another drink, but I think you get the whole idea with where that's going. Don't you? So, yeah, maybe humans might go extinct, or maybe obsolete. But just in case you're not convinced yet, let's really ram the point home. Let's really do it. You see, what we need now is, how am I going to put it, better ways of joining this stuff and better technologies instead of requiring things like glue, soldering irons and so on and so forth. Well, we have UV curing lamps. I will feature this one at some point too. So those were something that I was speaking about 20 years ago, and they've been on the market for the last 5 or so years. So this really isn't looking very good for humans now, is it? If we start to have more of this stuff fitted. But it's not done here either. Let's hear the final piece of this. Right. A few years ago, and even up until recently, if I wanted to do a lot of repairs, with oscilloscopes and multimeters, it would require carrying old hand tack there and one of these. Yes, quite combination. What are you doing here? How nice of you to drop in. Stay put. Stay there, Scully. Don't move. Anywho, alright. So it will require for me to do a lot of repairs. This sort of stuff. Multimeter and oscilloscope. You want to see something really cool. Right? And bearing in mind that could be to diagnose something like that. See how big that is? You're going to love this. That's the size of it. That's it. Pocket meter. And we're going to have a look at that at some point. Bit of a size difference, that, isn't it? That I can wear around my neck and get this, even potentially have it implanted. If I break this down, I'm not saying I would do something like that. I'm not hinting it at all, am I? I'm not hinting that possibility at all. Taking everything out of there and encasing it in a bioresin. Take the 2 leads, run them into the fingers, and where the fingertips are, you'd have an interface there. And have that implanted somewhere else. This thing connects to your phone or to whatever else wirelessly. You think about that. Now I don't even need to carry anything around with me because it's in me and I am it. Not only that, but yeah, these biomagnets are a thing. You can actually have them implanted. Oh yes, and get this. When you go near a voltage source with them, you feel them tingle. I'm not the only cyborg, by the way. Is it Harmson or Harrison? I think is his name. Guy who's got the antenna out of his head. I'll leave all the links to this below. Oh, and by the way, that iPhone, bin it. I've got one better. Bin the glasses as well. Take the eye out. I guess that's the way. Even that's obsolete as well. I've cut it down even smaller to something essentially about that big, and it just goes in front. That's it. Similar to Google Glass, but better. And you can make and receive phone calls on, just like you can with this as well. Completely. There you go. Straight in there. And now we have all of our capabilities, what with the hands, extended memory, and then soon, where do we put that sodding thing? Whatever. The whole, yeah, there it is. Yeah, if we wanted to embed a calculator in us and have the chip go into the brain, well, why would you need the chip out of that? Because it's only one function. You would just take one out of a smartphone. Smaller technology, isn't it? Think about it. Get with the times, people. Get with the times. Because nature and evolution tells you need to. The sum of this is simple. All right. If it ever came down to it, where there was a war between humans and machines. In fact, let me take a break on this one. We'll see you in a minute. Right, so where were we? I just had to have a comfort break. Ironically, cyborgs need them. So where were we? What have I got? Dents and dings in there, look. See? That's the drawback. Machine, you'd take that off, throw the old one away, and bolt on a new one. Alright, so the question, if I had to pick a side, humans or machines, because I'm cyborg, I'm in between. Answer carefully, huh? Well, I have. I already knew the answers, which is why I became part machine. If I had to choose between being on the side of humans or machines, well, it's not going to end very well for humans then, is it? It's not a very good day for them, basically put. Which brings us to the final point. like we said, I couldn't care how crazy people think I am. Don't really care about it. I don't care because I don't have any emotional thought to that. People can hold the opinion of what they want to hold about me. I don't really care. I know where my happiness is, and yeah. Oh dear. Another reason why I hate being in a human body. Hate it. Too many things go wrong. Too many. Too many inconsistencies. And listening to too much bullshit. And hearing it. Alright. Anyhow. The final part though. Comes down to the technological singularity. Right? How far away is it? This is the Holy Grail, essentially. It's the Holy Grail in terms of human longevity, and it's the ultimate boundary between man and machine. Some may already argue that we're there. I say we're not bloody close enough. If I had to hazard a guess, and put a feasible guesstimate on it, in short, when humans are indistinguishable, essentially, between machine, 30 years. 30 years. Probably at most. 30 years. Right. That's if we go the route of cyborgs. Now, bearing in mind, we could theoretically knock off the head, take the brain out, and put it into another body. Mechanized body, essentially. Although, yeah, difficult. But 30 years, I think that's reasonable. Nanotechnology, organ duplication, I think we could. I think we could. If we went that way. However, I'm not convinced that is the way it will go. Because of future space travel. And that is something I do want to touch upon, and I'll do that in a follow-on video. I think we'll look at that. The future for humans, much further forward. And indeed, even the future for cyborgs, because current form isn't sustainable. It isn't. And Mark Zuck, the cuck, who doesn't give a about you, is sort of on the right lines with it when he mentioned about his, it was some kind of other network he was on about, where it's all VR based. Read about it. I can't remember what he called it now. It was only just recent. It's not Zeta now or anything like that. It was something like that, though. Essentially taking these VR glasses and having everybody plugged in. Yeah. and filling it with advertising, useless advertising, legend bullshit. But okay, not convinced. But downloading the consciousness into a machine is something I am looking at. Long term, that is probably the way I would want to go, because of the constraints of the human body. And that is something that we will look at, and it might even be the end of the cyborg before Borgs have really become mainstream. Again, I think even I am sort of limited. Some may say that I'm human 2.0. Others would say, yeah, you're a hybrid. Who knows? But there's your three options: human, cyborg, or machine. And if I had to pick one of the three to become, I'd rather become more machine. I'm already doing it. Right? Love machines. Love it. Well, here's the final twist though. We're all machines, really. We all are, just on a biological scale. Right? When it comes to biology, what cell replication is and how your body works is essentially a machine. It's biochemistry at work. But again, that's a story for another day. I think you've probably had enough now. At least you now know where I lay. And my antenna's sticking up even more. Ooh, I have email. Better go and read it. Hang on. Yeah, I'm just coming off of YouTube now. Something like that. Oh, did I say that out loud? I meant to think it. So it goes something like, comment, subscribe, ringy ding, get the bell on, no cheating, and glitch out.